It's really good to be back in Highfield Park and with you lovely St Mary's children. And it's, what season is it?
Spring!
It's spring, we're feeling springy. And this story is about the swallow. If I say sing, can you say spring? Sing.
Spring!
Sing.
Spring!
Sing, sing, sing.
Spring!
Sing-a-ding-ding-ding.
Spring!
In the beginning, God created the world. And it was bright and it was beautiful, filled with all creatures, great and small. And after 6 days of working hard to create the whole of the world, God was tired. And he came down to the earth to look at the first spring day. And he saw those leaves on the trees that you can see now. He heard the birds singing for the first ever time in the history of the world. The rivers were rushing and the fields were green. And eventually he came to the Garden of Eden. And the little wren was singing in the garden, and there in the Garden of Eden was Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve, they sat around the fire, and they invited God in for a cup of tea. And God had a cup of tea with Adam and Eve, and they talked about how things were so good in the Garden of Eden. But as well as light, there is dark. As well as good, there is... As well as God, there is the... the devil. Well, the devil, he'd fallen out of the sky. He was the fallen angel and he'd come down to earth. And God knew if the devil was allowed into the Garden of Eden, he would cause trouble. He would cause mischief. He would make everything go wrong. And so he put a great hedge around the whole of the Garden of Eden. And there were golden gates with 2 guardian angels with burning swords. And they watched everybody that came in and out. And they stopped the devil from getting in to the Garden of Eden. How do you think the devil felt about that?
Angry.
He felt horrible, left out. He had a fear of missing out.
Isolated.
He felt isolated. Anything else?
Sad.
Sad.
Angry.
Angry. And so he seethed with anger, he wriggled with envy, and he decided to find a way to get in. And he noticed that all of God's creatures, all the different animals, they could come and go through the gates of the Garden of Eden. So the devil, he went to speak to every single one of God's creatures and asked them if they would help him to get into the garden, but none of them would listen, except one. One animal that listened to the devil. One small snake. Snake listened, he stopped. And then the devil said, if you let me into the Garden of Eden, I will tell you who has the sweetest flesh in the whole of creation. And Snakey wanted to eat a sweet meat. So he said, okay, I'll let you tell me and I'll let you come in. He said, I'll tell you after you let me go into the garden.
He's not going to tell.
So the devil, he made himself as small as a seed. And then he walked into the serpent's mouth and he hung on to one of the snake's fangs. And then inside the mouth, snake went into the Garden of Eden. And the guardian angels, they didn't see the devil inside the snake's mouth. And then the snake went to where Adam and Eve were sitting around the fire in the Garden of Eden. And from inside the snake's mouth, the devil spoke to Eve and told her to take one of the fruits from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God had told them not to eat that fruit. And she picked it and she ate it and she shared it with Adam. And in that moment, this is the story from the Bible, they were banished from the Garden of Eden. Mankind was expelled from the garden and evil entered into the world. But what's not in the Bible is the other half of the story, because the snake wanted his part of the bargain. And the devil did tell him, he said, the sweetest meat in all of creation for you to eat is
Fruit.
Adam and the sons of Adam and Eve and the daughters of Eve. And so Snake was excited to find this out and he started to slither. Can you help me do some slithering? He slithered and sneaked and searched his way through to where Adam and Eve were underneath the trees and they were a bit cold. And there he was just about to bite them when a bird came down. A flutter of feathers, and there came down a bird with little red cheeks, and she's called...
Robin.
Swallow. This one has got cheeks, not the red breast of the robin, but little red cheeks here. And Swallow landed down in front of the snake and said, where are you going sneaking through the grass? And the snake said, I'm going to eat a bite of Adam and a bite of Eve. Why are you doing that? Because the devil told me it was the sweetest flesh. What? Everybody knows the devil is a liar. He's lying to you. I know what we should do. We should prove it. We'll get, mosquito. We'll get Mosquito to fly around the whole of the world and have a bite out of every kind of creature and then report back to us here in the garden and tell us who has the sweetest meat. Okay, said Snake. And the mosquito was very happy to go and have a bite of everybody. And she flew off around the world. It took her a whole year to try and taste a little bit of the blood of all of God's creatures. And she was flying back to tell everybody that it actually was Adam and Eve that had the sweetest flesh. But before she got to the meeting, swallow dived down. You ever seen a swallow dive like that? No. Swallow whoosh, swooped down from high to low, swooped down, landed in front of the mosquito and said, Mosquito, what do you know? Mosquito said, it is Adam and Eve that have the sweetest flesh. And Swallow said, please, would you come a little bit closer? I can't hear you. And Mosquito flew closer and with her beak, do you know what she did?
Bite. Eat.
Not eat quite, she bit the tongue out of Mosquito.
Oh, so it couldn't talk.
So he couldn't talk, and Mosquito came to the meeting to tell everybody who had the sweetest flesh, and all Mosquito could say was, try it. And nobody could understand. I know what Mosquito is saying, said Swallow. Mosquito is saying that Frog has the sweetest flesh, and so Snake, you should eat Frog. But Snake knew that Swallow had tricked him. And you know snakes can do this. They coil up, a bit like a spring. Yeah. Coil up, and he was going to bite, possibly eat Swallow. And just as he coiled up ready to bite, Swallow, she lifted her wings, she flew, and Snake, he reached out and he bit the back of her tail. And if you see a swallow, and they're coming around about now, they'll be arriving here in England for summer, if you look at their tails, you know what shape they are?
Triangle.
Like a fork. They've got a triangle shape out the middle. They've got a forked tail because Snake once took the bite out of their tails. But human beings, like Sophie and me and Moyd, we still love swallows. And when they arrive in springtime, we go, wow, the swallows are back. It must be spring. And that is the end of that. Pull my beard, the story's disappeared. Do you remember that one? Let's try it. Pull my beard, the story's disappeared. Well done, that was great. You were so good at listening.